Chapter 6, the book on traveling. Chapter 39, what has been related about shortening the prayer during travels. Ibn Umar narrated, I traveled with the Prophet Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman. They would pray Sur and Asr as 2 rak'ah, and 2 rak'ah, not praying before them nor after them. And Ibn Umar said, if I was going to pray before it or after it, then I would pray it complete. Great Hassan. Abu an-Nadra said, Imran bin Hussein was asked about the traveler's prayer. He said, I performed Hajj with the Messenger of Allah, and he prayed 2 rak'ah. I performed Hajj with Abu Bakr, and he prayed 2 rak'ah, and with Umar, and he prayed 2 rak'ah, and with Uthman for 6 years of his khilafah, or 8 years, and he prayed 2 rak'ah. Great Daif. Anas bin Malik narrated, we prayed Sur as 4 with the Prophet in Al-Madinah, and Asr as 2 rak'ah in Dil Hulayfa. Great Sahih. Ibn Abbas narrated, the Prophet went from Al-Madinah to Makkah, not fearing anyone except Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and he prayed 2 rak'ah. Great Sahih. Chapter 40. What has been related about how long the prayer is shortened. Yahya bin Abi Ishaq al-Hadrami narrated that Anas bin Malik said, we went with the Messenger of Allah from Al-Madinah to Mecca, and he prayed 2 rak'ah. He said, I said to Anas, how long did Messenger of Allah stay in Mecca? He said, 10 days. Great Sahih. Ibn Abbas narrated, the Messenger of Allah traveled on a journey, and he prayed 2 rak'ah for 19 days. Ibn Abbas said, so when we would stay somewhere for 19 days, and we would pray 2 rak'ah, and if we stayed longer than that, we would complete the salat. Great Sahih. Chapter 41. What has been related about voluntary prayers while traveling. Al-Bara bin Asib said, I accompanied the Messenger of Allah on 18 journeys, and I did not see him leave the 2 rak'ah when the sun waned before Sur. Great Hassan. Ibn Umar narrated, I prayed Sur with the Prophet on a journey as 2 rak'ah and 2 rak'ah after it. Great Daif. Ibn Umar narrated, I prayed with the Prophet both while a resident and while traveling, so I prayed for Sur with him as a resident, and 2 rak'ah after it. I prayed 2 rak'ah for Sur with him while traveling, and 2 rak'ah after it, and 2 rak'ah for Asr, and he did not pray anything after it. Maghrib while a resident and traveling is the same. 3 rak'ah, it is not decreased as a resident, nor while traveling. It is witr of the day, and after it are 2 rak'ah. Great Daif. Chapter 42. What has been related about combining 2 prayers. Mu'adh bin Jabal narrated, while the Prophet as at the Battle of Tabuk, if he wanted to depart before the sun's decline, he would delay Sur, so that he could pray it together with Asr. If he wanted to depart after the sun's decline, he would hasten Asr to Sur, and pray Sur and Asr together, and then move it. If he wanted to depart before Maghrib, he would delay Maghrib until he prayed it with Isha. And if he wanted to depart after Maghrib, he would hasten Isha, so that he would pray it along with Maghrib. Great Sahih. Another chain, Qutayba, narrated this hadith to us, meaning the hadith of Mu'adh, Great Sahih. Nafi narrated, Ibn Umar had been requested to urgently attend to one of his wives. So he hurried en route and delayed Maghrib until the twilight disappeared. Then he dismounted to combine the prayers. Then he informed them that the Messenger of Allah would do that when he was in a hurry on a trip. Great Sahih. Chapter 43. What has been related about Salat al-Istisqa, the prayer to request rain. Abad bin Tamim narrated from his uncle, the Messenger of Allah went out with the people to seek rain, so he led them in prayer for 2 rak'ah, reciting aloud in them, turning his upper wrap around, raising his hands, requesting rain, and facing the Qibla. Great Sahih. Umayr, the freed slave of Abi al-Lam, narrated from Abi al-Lam that he saw the Messenger of Allah at Ajar as-Sait supplicating for rain, and he was raising his hands in supplication. Great Sahih. It is narrated from Hisham bin Ishaq, and he was from Ibn Abdullah ibn Kinana from his father, who said, Al-Walid bin Uqba, the governor of Al-Madinah, sent me to ask Ibn Abbas about how the Messenger of Allah would perform Salat al-Istisqa. I came to him and he said, the Messenger of Allah would go out in modest dress, humbly, imploring, until he reached the Musalla. He would not give this khutbah of yours, rather he would continue supplication and imploring, saying the takbir, and pray 2 rak'ah, just as he would pray for the Eid. Great Hassan. Another chain from Hisham bin Ishaq bin Abdullah bin Kinana from his father, and he mentioned a similar narration and added, with humility to it, Great Hassan. Chapter 44. What has been related about Salat al-Kusuf, the eclipse prayer. Ibn Abbas narrated, the Prophet prayed during the eclipse. He recited, then bowed, then recited, then bowed, then recited, then bowed 3 times. Then he performed 2 prostrations, and the next one, rak'ah, was the same. Great Sahih. Aisha narrated, the sun was eclipsed during the time of the Messenger of Allah. So the Messenger of Allah led the people in prayer. He recited a lengthy recitation, then he bowed, a lengthy bowing. Then he raised his head and recited a lengthy recitation that was less than the first. Then he bowed, a lengthy bowing that was less than the first. Then he raised his head and prostrated. Then he did similar to that in the second rak'ah. Great Sahih. Chapter 45. The manner of the recitation for the eclipse. Samura bin Junda narrated, the Prophet led us in prayer during an eclipse. We did not hear his voice. Great Hassan. Aisha narrated, the Prophet prayed the eclipse prayer and he recited aloud in it. Great Sahih. Chapter 46. What has been related about Salat al-Kawf, the fear prayer. Salib narrated from his father, the Prophet prayed Salat al-Kawf, praying 1 rak'ah with one of the 2 groups, while the other group was facing the enemy. When the first group finished their first rak'ah with him, They went and took position of the second group, facing the enemy. Then the second group came and he led them in another rak'ah. Then he said the taslim to them, while the group proceeded to complete their second rak'ah. Thereafter the first group stood up to finish their second rak'ah. Great Sahih. Sa'al bin Abi Hatma said about Salat al-Kawf, the Imam stands facing the Qibla while a group of them stand with him, and a group is before the enemy, facing the enemy. He leads them in a rak'ah, and they perform a bowing by themselves, and they perform 2 prostrations in their places. Then they go to take the position of the others, and the others come for prayers. He, the Imam, bows for 1 rak'ah with them and performs 2 prostrations with them. That is 2 for him and 1 for them. Then they perform 1 bowing and 2 prostrations. Great Sahih. Abu Isa said, Muhammad bin Bashar said, I asked Yahya bin Sayyid, narrators in number 565, about this hadith. So he narrated it to me from Shuba, from Abdul Rahman bin al-Qasim, from his father, from Salih bin Kawat, from Sal bin Abi Hatma, from the Prophet, the same as the hadith of Yahya bin Sayyid al-Ansari, and he, Yahya, said to me, write it next to it. He did not memorize the hadith better though, rather it is the same hadith as that of Yahya bin Sayyid al-Ansari, a hadith similar to number 565 with a different chain of narrators. Great Sahih. It was reported by Malik from Yazid bin Ruman, from Salih bin Kawat, from someone who prayed Salat al-Kawf with the Prophet, and he mentioned a similar narration. Great Sahih. Chapter 47. What has been related about locations in the Quran where one is to prostrate. Abu ad-Darda narrated, I performed 11 prostrations of recitation with the Messenger of Allah. Among them was that which is in Surat an-Najm. Great Da'if. Another chain in which Abu ad-Darda narrated, I performed 11 prostrations with the Messenger of Allah. Among them was that which is in Surat an-Najm. Great Da'if. Chapter 48. What has been related about women going out to the Masjid. Mujahid narrated, we were with Ibn Umar, and he said, the Messenger of Allah said, permit the woman to go at night to the Masjid. His son said, by Allah, we would not permit them, lest they become insidious from that. So he, Abdullah, retorted, may Allah do and such with you. I say, the Messenger of Allah said, and you say, we do not permit them. Great Sahih. Great Sahih. Chapter 49. What has been related about it being disliked to spit in the Masjid. Tariq bin Abdullah al-Muharibi narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, when you are in Salat, then do not spit on your right, but behind you, or toward your left, or under your left foot. Great Sahih. Anas bin Malik narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, to spit in the Masjid is a sin, and burying it is its atonement. Great Sahih. Chapter 50. What has been related about the prostrations of recitation in when the heaven if split asunder and read in the name of your Lord who has created. Abu Huraira narrated, we prostrated with the messenger of Allah in read in the name of your Lord, and when the heaven is split asunder. Great Sahih. Another chain in which Abu Huraira narrated from the Prophet similarly. Great Sahih. Chapter 51. What has been related about prostration in Surat al-Najm. Ibn Abbas narrated, the Messenger of Allah prostrated for it, meaning in Surat al-Najm, and so did the Muslims, the idolaters, the jinns, and the people. Great Sahih. Chapter 52. What has been related about the one who did not prostrate for it. Sayyid bin Thabit narrated, I recited Surat al-Najm to the Messenger of Allah, and he did not prostrate for it. Great Sahih. Chapter 56. What has been related about the prostration in Surat Sad. Ibn Abbas narrated, I saw the Messenger of Allah prostrating for Surat Sad. Ibn Abbas said, it is not one of their resolute prostrations. Chapter 54. What has been related about the prostration in Surat Al-Hajj. Uqba bin Amir narrated, I said, O Messenger of Allah, Surah Al-Hajj has been esteemed by 2 prostrations. He said, yes, and whoever does not prostrate for them, he should not recite them. Great Hassan. Chapter 55. What has been related about what is said during a prostration for recitation in the Quran. Al-Hassan bin Muhammad bin Ubaidullah bin Abi Yazid said, Ibn Jurayj said to me, O Hassan, Ubaidullah bin Abi Yazid informed me that Ibn Abbas said, a man came to the Prophet and said, O Messenger of Allah, I had a dream at night while I was sleeping in which I was praying behind a tree. When I prostrated, the tree prostrated along with me. Then I heard it saying, Allahumaktu li biha indaka ajran wad ani biha visran vaj alha li biha indaka dukran wa takabalha mini kama takabaltaha min abdiki Dawood. O Allah, record for me a reward with you for it, remove a sin for me by it, and store it away for me with you, and accept it from me as you accepted it from your worshipper Dawood. Al-Hassan said, Ibn Jurayj said to me, your grandfather said to me. Ibn Abbas said, so the Prophet recited an ayah of prostration, then prostrated. He said, so Ibn Abbas said, I listened to him, and he was saying the same as the man informed that the tree had said. Great Hassan. Aisha narrated, when the Messenger of Allah would prostrate for recitation of the Quran, he would say, Sajada wajhiya liladi kalakahu wa shaka samahu wa basarahu bihavlihi wa kuwatihi. I have prostrated my face to the one who created it and made its hearing and vision, though his ability and power. Great Daif. Chapter 56. What has been related about one who missed his section at night, so he makes it up during the day. Umar bin al-Khattab narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever slept missing his section or some of it, then he recited it between the Fajr prayer and the Sud prayer, it is written for him as if he had recited it in the night. Great Sahih. Chapter 56. What has been related about the severe warning regarding the one who raises his head before the Imam. Abu Huraira narrated, Muhammad said, does not the one who raises his head before the Imam fear that Allah would transform his head into a donkey's head? Great Sahih. Chapter 57. What has been related about the one who prays the obligatory prayer, then leads the people in prayer after that? Jabir bin Abdullah narrated, Muad bin Jabal would pray al-Maghrib with the Messenger of Allah, then he would return to his people to lead them in prayer. Great Sahih. Chapter 58. What has been mentioned about the permission to prostrate on their clothing during the heat and cold? Anas bin Malik narrated, when we prayed behind the Prophet in the midday heat, we would prostrate on our garments and as a protection against the heat. Great Sahih. Chapter 59. What has been mentioned about what is recommended when sitting after the Subh prayer until the sun has risen? Jabir bin Samura narrated, when the Prophet prayed Fajr, he would remain seated where he had prayed until the sun had risen. Great Sahih. Anas bin Malik narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever prays Fajr in congregation, then sits remembering Allah until the sun has risen, then he prays 2 rak'ah, then for him is the reward like that of a Hajj and Umrah. He said, the Messenger of Allah said, complete, complete, complete. Great Da'if. Chapter 60. What has been mentioned about looking around during Salat? Ibn Abbas narrated, the Messenger of Allah would glance toward the right and the left during Salat, but he would not turn his neck to look behind him. Great Hassan. Sayyid bin Abi Hind narrated from some of the companions of Ikrimah, the Prophet would glance during Salat, and he mentioned a similar narration. Great Hassan. Anas narrated, the Messenger of Allah said to me, O my son, beware of looking around during the Salat, for indeed looking around during Salat is destruction. If you must do so, then in the voluntary prayers, not in the obligatory prayers. Da'if. Aisha narrated, I asked the Messenger of Allah about looking around during the Salat. He said, it is a portion which the shaitan snatches during a man's prayer. Great Sahih. Chapter 61. What has been mentioned about a man who catches up with the Imam while he is in prostration? What should he do? Muad bin Jabal narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, when one of you comes to the Salat and finds the Imam is in a position, then do as the Imam is doing. Great Da'if. Chapter 62. About it being disliked for the people to wait for the Imam while they are standing at the beginning of the prayer. Abdullah bin Abi Qatada narrated from his father that the Messenger of Allah said, when the Iqamah is called for the prayer, then do not stand until you see that I have come out. Great Sahih. Chapter 63. What has been mentioned about praising Allah and sending salat upon the Prophet before supplicating? Abdullah said, I was prayed and the Prophet Abu Bakr and Umar were there. So when I sat, I started off with praising Allah, then sending salat upon the Prophet, then supplicating for myself. So the Prophet said, ask your request. So the Prophet said, ask, your request will be granted. Ask, your request will be granted. Great Hassan. Chapter 64. What has been mentioned about scenting the Majid. Aisha narrated, the Prophet ordered the construction of masajid in all dur, and that they be kept clean and scented. Great Sahih. Another chain from Hisham bin Urwa from his father, that the Prophet ordered, and he mentioned similarly. Great Sahih. Another chain from Hisham from Urwa from his father, that the Prophet ordered, and he mentioned similarly. Great Sahih. Chapter 65. What has been related about the Salat during the night and the day is 2 and 2. Ibn Umar narrated that the Prophet said the Salat during the night and the day is 2 and 2. Great Hassan. Chapter 66. How the Prophet performed voluntary prayers during the day. Asim bin Damra said, we asked Ali about the prayer of the Messenger of Allah during the day. He said, you will not be able to do that. We said, whoever among is able, he will. So he said, when the sun appeared over there east, like it appears here west, at Asr, the Messenger of Allah would pray 2 rak'ah, and when the sun appeared over there east, like it appears here west, at Sur, he would pray 4 rak'ah, and he would pray 4 before Sur and 2 after it, and 4 before Asr, separating between every 2 rak'ah with at-taslim upon the angels that are close to Allah and those who follow them among the believers and the Muslims. Great Hassan. Another chain from Ali. From the Prophet similarly, number 598. Great Hassan. Chapter 67. About prayer in a woman's cover being disliked. Aisha narrated, the Messenger of Allah would not pray in women's covers. Great Sahih. Chapter 68. Mentioning what is allowed from walking and actions during voluntary salat. Urwa narrated that Aisha said, I came while the Messenger of Allah was praying in the house and the door was closed. So he walked until he opened the door for me. Then he returned to his place. And she described the door to be in the direction of the Qibla. Great Daif. Chapter 69. What has been mentioned about reciting 2 surat in a rak'ah. Abu Wa'il said, a man asked Abdullah bin Masud about this phrase, Gairi Asin, or is it Yasin? So he said, you can recite all of the Quran besides this phrase. He said, yes. He said, indeed, our people recite it, dispersing it like ad-daka are dispersed, without it passing their throats. Indeed, I am aware of the surahs that are comparable, which the Messenger of Allah would recite together. He said, so we told Al-Qama to ask him what they were. He said, 20 surahs from the Mufassal, from which the Prophet would combine, reciting every 2 surah in a rak'ah. Great Sahih. Chapter 70. What has been mentioned about the virtue of walking to the Majid and what rewards are written for each step one takes. Abu Hurairah Abu Huraira narrated that the Prophet said, when a man performs wudu and he performs his wudu well, then he leaves to the salat, and he did not leave, or he said he had no urge except for it, then there is not one step that he takes except that Allah raises him a degree from it, or removes a sin from him for it. Great Sahih. Chapter 71. What has been mentioned about Salat after Maghrib is more virtuous in the house. Sa'd bin Ishaq bin Ka'b bin Ujra narrated from his father from his grandfather, who said, the Prophet prayed Maghrib in the Masjid of Banu Abdul Ashbal, and some people stood to offer voluntary prayers. So the Prophet said, this salat is to be performed by you in your homes. Great Hassan. Chapter 72. What has been mentioned about a man performing ghusl when he accepts Islam. Qais bin Asim narrated that he accepted Islam and the Prophet ordered him to perform ghusl with water and sidr. Great Sahih. Chapter 73. What has been mentioned about the tasmiyah when entering the area of relieving oneself. Ali bin Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, the screen between the eyes of the jinns and nakedness of the children of Adam, when one of you enters the area of relieving oneself, is saying, Bismillah, great Daif. Chapter 74. What has been mentioned of the mark of this nation from the traces of prostrations and purification on the day of resurrection. Abdullah bin Busr narrated that the Prophet said, on the day of resurrection my nation will be radiant from prostrating and shining from wudu. Great Sahih. Great Sahih. Chapter 75. That starting from the right is recommended in purification. Aisha narrated, the Messenger of Allah would love to start with the right side when he purified himself, and when he combed, and when putting his sandals on. Great Sahih. Chapter 76. What has been mentioned about the amount of water that is acceptable for wudu. Anas bin Malik narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, the acceptable wudu is with 2 ratils of water. Great Daif. Chapter 77. What has been mentioned about sprinkling water on the urine of a male child of suckling age. Ali bin Abi Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, about urine of a male child that suckles, the urine of the boy is sprinkled and the girl's urine is washed. Qatada, one of the narrators, said, this is so as long as they do not eat. When they eat, then both of them are washed. Great Sahih. Chapter 77. What has been mentioned about the Prophet Sas performing Masr after the revelation of Surat al-Maidah. Shar bin Havshab said, I saw Jarir bin Abdullah performing wudu and wiping over his kuf. He said, so I asked him, what is that? He said, I saw the Prophet performing wudu and he wiped over his kuf. So I said to him, before Al-Maidah or after Al-Maidah? He said, I did not accept Islam until after Al-Maidah. Great Hassan. Shar bin Havshab said, another chain from Khalid bin Ziyad with similar. Great Hassan. Chapter 78. What has been mentioned about the permission for the sexually impure junub person to eat and sleep when he performs wudu. Ammar narrated, the Prophet permitted the junub when he wanted to eat, drink or sleep to perform wudu like the wudu for salat. Great Daif. Chapter 79. What has been mentioned about the virtue of the salat. Ka'b bin Ujra narrated, the Messenger of Allah said to me, I seek refuge in Allah for you, O Ka'b bin Ujra, from leader that will be after me. Whoever comes to their doors to approve of their lies and supports them in their oppression, then he is not of me, and I am not of him, and he will not meet me at the Havd. And whoever comes to their doors, or he does not come, and he does not approve of their lies, and he does not support them in their oppression, then he is from me, and I am from him, and he will meet me at the Havd. Ka'b bin Ujra. Salat is clear proof, and Sawm, fasting, is an impregnable shield, and Sadaqah, charity, extinguishes sins, just as water extinguishes fire. O Ka'b bin Ujra, there is no flesh raised that sprouts from the unlawful except that the fire is more appropriate for it. Great Hassan. Muhammad said, Ibn Numayr narrated to us from Ubaydullah bin Musa from Ghalib with this hadith. Great Hassan. Chapter 80. Something else about that. Sulaym bin Amir narrated, I heard Abu Umama saying, I heard the Messenger of Allah giving a khutbah during the farewell Hajj, and he said, have taqwa of your Lord, and pray your 5 prayers, and fast your month, and pay the zakat on your wealth, and obey those who are in charge of you. You will enter the paradise of your Lord. He said, I said to Abu Umama, I said to Abu Umama, how old were you when you heard this hadith from the Messenger of Allah? He said, I heard it when I was 30 years old. Great Hassan. Great Hassan.